Welcome back to Defining Moments. I'm Suzanne Quast, and my guest today is Josh Bitton. He is an actor, a teacher, a storyteller, and he has so much love for the craft of acting and artistry. He's been on over 40 different TV shows, ranging from The Pacific, The Night Of, Justified, and American Vandal. And he was Eminem's acting coach in 8 Mile. This man has had quite a career. And today we're going to hear his journey, understanding the mindset, the ups and downs, and what it actually looks like to pursue that thing, that career that sets your soul on fire. Here are his moments.
We could dim the light of day. Watching
That's you. I'm so excited to be talking to you.
Amazing.
So, you know, one of the things I think about when I think of you is you're somebody that's like completely immersed into your craft. So if you're not acting, you're teaching at your acting studio.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not teaching, you're on TV. If you're not on TV, then you're meeting with creatives and collaborating. Like, to me, you are the epitome of what it means to be an artist and a storyteller. What does storytelling mean to you?
First of all, that's a really humbling intro. So thanks. You know, I came to it in a really different way, I think. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to act. I saw I saw Kramer versus Kramer as a kid, and I was like, I could do that.
Oh, that's really light.
Yeah.
It's all about divorce.
Yeah.
Now I see a little bit of insight into your upbringing.
100%. And actually, my father was a photographer, and he took a photo of me that won some kind of award, and he got approached to for me to be repped, but my parents both worked, and they didn't want to do that. So I was on a completely different path. I wanted to be like a lawyer for the ACLU, like any good Jewish boy from New York would want to do. And I went into an acting class, and because a buddy of mine when I was in college was like, you should take an acting class, I think you'd like it. And I liked it, so I took a second one. And in that second one, something really specific happened in a moment, and I got lost, like truly lost in a moment with an actor, this woman, Kim, and I realized afterwards, and this leads to your question, that what was so intense and beautiful about it was completely honest. There was no facade. I don't know why. I didn't know what I was doing, really.
Yeah.
And I was lost in this moment and only got woken up by the class applauding. And it was so pure and so clean and unfiltered that I think for me, it felt like something that I'd wanted and missed my whole life. And then after the fact, it was when classmates of mine came up to me and they were moved and they didn't understand how I'd done it. And they were somewhere in tears. And I think in a subconscious way, I realized the power of storytelling and that it was not just like something cool to watch on a screen, but that when done well, when done with integrity, whether it's to make people laugh or make people think or feel, you know, you can speak to things that most of us are trained in life not to go near. You know what I mean?
That's so true. And I understand that feeling of feeling so present and getting that high. It is like a drug.
100%.
And it's like, I got to get more of that authentic, real, moment-to-moment interaction with a human being.
Yeah, because I think we are, you know, the amount of times we're told you're too emotional, you're too sensitive, or, you know, be a man, or, you know, or as an ex-girlfriend of mine used to say, pick up your Huggies, you know, pull up your Huggies. Yeah.
Wow.
Ex-girlfriend. Like we're trained to not live through our experiences. And and as a man, you know, I grew up in Queens. I grew up in like a real neighborhood. It was really, that kind of sensitivity was completely unwelcome. You know, you were less than if that's what you had. But I think that exists in all of us. You know?
Did your dad, or you have a brother, did they show did they emote, or did they express their feelings?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, my father's a really emotional guy, but explosively emotional. And when I was a kid, volatilely emotional. And my older brother mirrored that a lot. You know, he was angry. My brother was from a pretty early age, got addicted to drugs. And he's comfortable with me talking about this. He's now 23 years clean from heroin. Yeah.
23 years clean of heroin. And this is something that you do talk about. And I'm curious because this is really meaningful to me because my brother is a heroin addict and my mother was an addict. And I've never actually talked about it in a public forum.
Wow.
But it has been something that has deeply shaped who I am as a person and even shaped who I am as an artist.
Yeah.
How do you think dealing with addiction has impacted you personally and in your art, if it has?
It has definitely impacted my art and definitely impacted who I am as a person, as a boy, as a teenager, as a young man, as a grown man. I think in every facet. I think one of the things that it did, and probably the first step in what led me towards being an artist and being an actor, and why that moment in that classroom was so impactful, was because when you see that kind of trauma and that kind of volatility at a young age, I think it rends you open. And I think that gives this capacity for not feeling, because I think everyone has that capacity, but I think the walls are thinner. I think things that all of a sudden start landing on you more. The idea of catastrophe becomes really real when you're experiencing in your household, like you did, like I did.
Yep.
And so when I got into that moment with that actress, all the hiding and all the fear wasn't necessary anymore. I was lauded for that kind of presence. And then I think it also made me quite an empath.
100%.
Because walking through my house, I needed to know how everybody was feeling all the time for safety and security of myself, for them. It gave me this overwhelming sense, and I think out of balance sense of needing to take care of all those people too.
100%.
Yeah, and that, I think in some elements and some moments of my life is a real character strength. I can tend to you, I can be present for you. But for most of my life, it was a character weakness. It was, I'm in a 12-step program for families of drug addicts and alcoholics, Al-anon. And, they talk about taking a look at your character defects, or as a friend of mine calls them, which I really like better, a character defense. So my ability to take care of everyone was to really protect that little guy. But it also made me empathetic. So as an artist, it brought me to what we do.
Yep.
And it gives me a safe place where I can open up to other people in that way. Whereas sometimes in life, especially when you're dealing with addicts, when you're dealing with people who rage, it's scary and it can be very unsafe. So it was a mixed bag for me in terms of my brother and my father's vulnerability, because when I was younger, it was really volatile. Now, one of the most amazing things I've seen was watching my father with my stepbrother's children. And he is gentle and sweet and charming, because whatever his demons were, he's walked through them, walked past them,
Totally. Well, I think too, we get to a point where we see our parents as adults, or not as adults, as human beings.
Yeah.
And they've had stuff they've had to go through, right? That doesn't mean they did the best they could at that given time.
I think that's really true. And I think that was a big part of my healing process, was when I realized that my brother, my father, they did the best they could. That it wasn't personal. It wasn't that I was less than that made them act that way, So walking through all that absolutely has shaped who I am. And being open about it, I think also I find incredibly important, because it was sitting in a room, listening to someone being open about it, that made me take my first steps towards healing the things that were in me. I mean, to be honest, it happened at a friend's kitchen table. He started talking to me about the alcoholism in his family and how he had found this place where he could talk about it. I didn't even know I had an issue. The next thing I knew, I was sobbing at his kitchen table.
Oh.
And he really gently said to me, "Do you want to come with me to one of these meetings?" And I whimpered, I think, "Yeah, I think so." But it started with me becoming aware of the effects that those things had. I think I had been walking through life trying to take care of everyone, manage everyone, make sure everyone was okay, because secretly I was trying to make sure I was safe. but I had no awareness of how out of balance I was.
100%. Do you think that that also impacted or helped you choose the roles that you ended up playing or that you were naturally drawn to?
I think that's an interesting and sort of tricky question on a business level, because I would love to say I'm at a place where I'm picking roles, but I'm not, but I work,
You work a
I
lot.
work a decent amount. I think there are certain things that kind of openness allows me to do that not everyone can. Many can, but there's certain things, a certain kind of vulnerability, and also, funny enough, that rage that I grew up with incorporates a lot of characters I play, because I think I saw it, and I think inherently I understood that it's not just someone trying to be tough.
Yep.
It's not someone trying to be strong. It's someone who's often scared out of their mind, and that thing comes from so deep within that you have to be able to tap into that experience, in that kind of depth for it to really resonate.
Yep.
And so I think the roles that I've been lucky enough to get often have happened because those experiences feed the way that I walk through life, and the way that when I see something like that on a page, I go, oh, I get this.
This is like in my bones.
Yeah, it's in my bones, for sure.
What do you think then speaking of your career, have been some of the defining moments that have been a part of your journey that have led you to where you are in your career?
There's a bunch.
Okay.
There, right? It was like the day I went to an audition with a buddy of mine because the casting director had asked him to bring his own reader.
Which I feel like that doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. And from that led to this weird series of events where I was flown to Detroit to play Eminem's role in 8 Mile in the screen test. And then he watched me do that. And then we talked with the director, him and I, and then he played the role. And
so wait, I think we need to wind this up a bit. Okay, so you go with a friend to an audition to be his reader.
Yes.
You then go into the room with him. You're not reading for any of the parts.
No, I am there to be off camera to play the other role.
Okay.
Now, the casting director had asked everyone to bring a reader. There were 2 guys in the hallway. They didn't have readers. And my friend, Jamal, turned to me and he said, stay, man.
That's a good friend.
It's a good friend. So I stayed. When I was done, the casting director said, you did a great job. I said, thank you. She said, I want you to call my office in LA. Tell them I said to call, and we're going to give you an appointment for one of these roles, which felt like a huge victory.
Yes, to go in as a reader to then get an audition.
And then she said, also, Sunday are our callbacks, and I would love you to be the reader in the room for the callbacks, which I did for the first half of the day. They didn't ask me to stay for the second half because they said they weren't paying me and they didn't want to use my time like that. And I thought, I'll stay here all day.
Right.
Then I got a call later that night, and they said, would you come back in Monday morning for 1 hour to read with 3 actors who the director said didn't have a fair shot to be cast because they didn't get to read with you.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my experience. Like, I was like, wow. And then they said, we're going to pay you $100 because Curtis said nobody should work that hard and not get paid.
And you're like, and I'm getting paid? I mean, this is okay.
And then I went in. Then in the middle of, after reading with 2 actors, they handed me sides and they said, also, by the way, you have a callback for one of the roles. So I just kind of...
And you had not prepared?
At all.
Okay.
So I winged it. And then didn't get the role, but was asked a week later to fly to Detroit to play M's role in the screen test. And that screen test was on 9/11.
Wow.
So we got stuck in Detroit. I called my family in New York, make sure everyone was alive, because my stepbrother worked in the South Tower.
Wow.
And then I called my older brother, who had moved to LA, told him to stay home because I thought LA would be hit next. And then we didn't know what to do. So Curtis asked Marshall and I if we wanted to rehearse. So
Is that what you call him, just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean,
it's what we all call
That's
him.
what it's okay,
Am
go
or
on.
Marshall.
Yeah.
He's the best dude in the world. He's hilariously funny. And so we rehearsed for a few hours, and I guess they liked what they saw on him. And then they asked me if I'd stay for a couple of weeks, which turned to a month, which turned to 4.5 months. And I was on set every day.
Wow.
And that's what brought me to move to LA.
That's pretty remarkable because you had not coached anybody prior.
I mean, like,
You had helped probably.
yeah, when I was in graduate school for acting, one of the ways that they helped me pay for school is I taught an undergraduate acting class to non-majors, just people who were like, acting sounds like fun. And then I had friends in New York who used to come to me, but I wouldn't charge anybody. They just thought, I think, that I was good with script breakdown. So I would help them coach, but never like this, never for money, never with an international superstar, the lead of a very high budget movie.
Yep.
You know, it was really thrown in, and I wound up coaching the little girl who played his sister, and then a lot of the day player guys, we would kind of, you know, get into stuff. It was an amazing experience. I'm still super close with some of the guys in that cast. We were a family. It was cool.
That is really remarkable. I'm serious.
You
I'm
actually
like,
look stunned.
no, I don't mean it's stunned. I just love Eminem.
Yeah.
Like, he is the best.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, like, what an opportunity and cool experience.
And I was a
that
hip hop fan.
So
I was
there you
a
go.
big hip hop kid in New York.
Did you, like, come, like, to set rapping?
No, because he's the best maybe that ever been. And I watched him create, like, playfully. He just always does it. He would go like Coca-Cola, Motorola Coca-Cola soda holder. And he would just then like write 3 words down. And then all of a sudden you'd hear part of that in a song, like you saw the seed of.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I told him a story about my brother that seems to have kind of wound up in a song.
Really?
Yeah.
You're like,
a meat cleaver. It's
well, all right.
I said I grew up with a lot of volatility. I wasn't lying.
Okay, so then you come out to LA. Then what do you think was one of the bigger defining moments once you were out here?
That's also really interesting because, like, I want to say getting cast in the Pacific was hugely defining, and it was. But what led to it was even crazier, which was I was on a softball team because I was a college baseball player, and my friend's husband, who was in venture capitalism, he asked me if I'd play second base for his team because he said they were terrible. I became buddies with these guys.
When you played baseball, so that's not, yeah.
Yeah. So I started playing ball with these guys. I didn't know what any of them did. One of them is the president of CBS now. A bunch of them are writers.
Wow.
And so one of them called me in. He's like, I wrote a pilot. It's getting picked up. We're shooting the pilot. I want to get you a job. And I went in and met the casting director. I got a 1-line role on the pilot. But that conversation from that casting director led me 4 months later to her calling me in to be a reader, kind of like I was in the Eminem situation, for a different pilot. From being a reader on that pilot, no audition, I had no agent.
Wow.
I got one of the leads on the pilot.
Wow. Wow. See, but I think that just goes to also say, like, in whatever industry you're in, say yes.
Totally.
Say yes.
Yes.
To whatever that experience is, because you don't know where that could lead.
No, and so I did this pilot, and the casting director said, you need an agent. I had a manager who I'm still with, we're family, but I didn't have an agent. And she started calling agents for me. And the agency that I wound up with, which I was with for years, they met with me. They said, go shoot the pilot. We want to see your work before we'll sign you, which I thought had a lot of integrity.
I agree.
She sent them my audition. They called me and said, we love you. We think you're talented. We're not going to take any money from the pilot, but we'll sign you when you get back. Second audition they sent me on was the Pacific.
Wow.
And that job, you know, really opened a lot of doors for me, but it also gave me a family. Those guys.
That's actually how I ended up meeting you.
Oh, yeah.
Was through John Bernthal.
John. And John and I met, and I want to say in like 10 minutes, maybe quicker, we both looked at each other and were like, okay, you're one of my people. And that's not just him. Badge, Keith, Josh, Jacob. Honestly, the list of guys and women from that show who I consider family is one of those things that has kept me rooted and grounded in a business that we both know can rock you.
Speaking of business that can rock you, you talk openly about this too, about the highs and lows of the business.
Yep.
How do you think your mindset has evolved over the last 20 years of being in this space?
I recover quicker. I take it less personally. I don't take the work less personally. The desire isn't less personal. But I've been around enough and in enough rooms on both sides of that room as a reader and as an actor to know that the decisions are so rarely because you're not enough.
Yep.
Now, what it's, so the personal need of, oh God, pick me, pick me, pick me, is gone.
How do you energetically get that? Because I hear you, and I feel like now we're in a time of like really much more self-awakening and evaluation, and that need or that desire. I understand the concept of it, but how do you actually get yourself to that place?
So for me, it was rooted in two things mainly. One was after a pretty bad breakup, I called one of my boys from the Pacific, one of my best friends, told him what had happened, and he gave me the number of his therapist.
I think therapy is the answer to a lot of things.
I do too, because the thing is, and this is what was key about it, my insurance didn't cover it because the woman was out of network. I called my mom and I said, I don't know if I can afford this, because at the time I wasn't working as an actor. And my mom simply said to me, you're worth it. And if you need help, I'll help you. I never had to ask her for the money, but I think more importantly, I needed to hear that I was worth an hour a week just for me. From that, I had been dabbling in Al-anon, which is the 12-step program I go to for families of drug addicts and alcoholics. But my therapist grew up in an alcoholic home, and she goes to Al-anon.
So she really pushed you?
Gently. If I was having a rough week, she'd say, you know, maybe go to a meeting more or two. And then one day, after being sick and tired of a lot of shit,
Yep.
I started really going. And what I discovered was that my reactions to like, pick me, pick me, pick me, were rooted in very historical stuff. You know, there's a phrase they use in a lot of those 12-step rooms, if it's hysterical, it's historical.
My therapist says the same thing.
Really?
Yeah.
And so where my need to be an actor and an artist and to tell stories was from that like pure contact that I had with that human in that moment. It was also rooted in being a child who went through a lot of trauma and didn't understand how people bigger and older than me could treat me that way. So being picked was a way of someone saying, I think you're worth something. When I uncovered that stuff wasn't about acting, that stuff was about other stuff, the cognitive part of my brain could turn and say, hey, this isn't about you. So you can let that part of it go. You can be disappointed you didn't get the job, but it doesn't have to reflect on your value as a man.
Amen to that. Okay, one final thing and say it into the camera.
Okay.
All right. If you could define the legacy you want to leave behind in a couple of words, what would it be?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it is to live with integrity and vulnerability, being able to stand up for yourself, but not needing to push that, you know, so that you can occupy your own space, be present and available for other people, but know that you're enough. That's what it would be. Know that you're enough. As a simple and specific phrase and ideology, you are enough.
What a beautiful way to end the show. You're going to make me cry.
Stop.
I hope you guys like this. Please forward this to anyone who is out there pursuing their passion or their dreams. Thank you for being here.